welcome back to Into the Ashes, our England versus Australia podcast brought to you by DAFA News. I'm Jamie once again, and joining me are Liam and Dom. I'm going to start with Liam. Liam, a few words on Australia's win at Edgbaston, as well as, what's his name? Ollie Robinson?
Yeah, it was certainly an exciting test match from both sides. I could see how it would be exciting, entertaining. It's good to see the Aussies get a win, especially when probably our two best batsmen failed to really fire a shot in Smith and Labuschagne. So it's a really positive win for Australia, and obviously Ollie Robinson has become a bit of a public enemy for us over here, just with the way he mouthed off at Uzi Khawaja, who's the people's champion. He's one of the greatest blokes in cricket, and he also smacked him around for 140. So sometimes it's better not to say anything than make yourself look like a fool. But positive result, and there's still room for improvement, as I said, with guys like Smith and Labuschagne, and hopefully David Warner at some stage in the series too.
Just very, very quickly, Liam, we've spoken about Usman Khawaja. I know that Marnus Labuschagne's record is not the best outside of Australia, but what about David Warner? I mean, you rightfully took his name. If he continues to fail, do you see him playing all 5 matches?
I find it hard to see how he would keep getting picked if he doesn't fire in the second test. They might give him 2 more games, but hopefully he can turn things around. We know how dominant and how classy he can be on his day. So hopefully runs are around the corner, but there wasn't a hell of a lot in the first test that filled the Aussies with optimism in that regard. Yeah,
Dom. The declaration, I mean, I personally have no issue with it. I want to get your take on the declaration, 393, end of day 1. But also, is that something we might see sort of sets the tone, not just for the next test at Lord's beginning Wednesday, but perhaps even the matches beyond that?
Yeah, I mean, so this is the second time in 3 tests that Stokes has declared 8 down on the first day, and England have ended up losing a tight game. They lost despite making New Zealand follow on in Christchurch. But I think the problem with getting fixated on the declaration is all the things that happen after that. I mean, England have got to a point where Australia needed 54 and had 2 wickets remaining. If you put yourself in that position in a test match, I think everything you've done up to that point has on balance worked pretty well, and then you've not go over the line in that sport. I think Stokes will stick with Stokes, and McCullum will stick with this. I think the key thing in the first innings where England maybe lost the game isn't the declaration. It's the fact that nobody apart from Joe Root on a very flat pitch made a really sort of big, decisive score. I think if England had been 390 or 420 for 5, say, they don't declare. They carry on into day 2 and they go big. But at that point, you think, you're down to 8, 9, 10. How many more runs are you realistically going to add? And, Stokes got England on the front foot. The next morning, Australia were 2 for 28. So I see why the declaration chat goes on, but there are reasons England lost that test match. And I think the declaration is fairly low down them, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. As well as, we've heard McCullum, we've heard Stokes, Dom. They keep saying it's not about winning or losing. It's about maintaining whatever's going on. Fair enough to a certain extent. At some point, of course, if the losses start to add up, the fans are going to say, "Hang on, what's going on?" But just sticking with Ollie Robinson, we've heard Zach Crawley, we've heard James Anderson. Is this something you think is now very normal for them to just able to voice their opinion without repercussions of what anyone really has to say about it?
Yeah, you get a lot of criticism of back-to-back tests like we've got coming up. I would say one argument in favour of back-to-back tests is it stops everybody talking absolute rubbish for a week in the middle. Obviously results matter in an Ashes series. I think any analysis of Bazball has to be prefaced by England won 1 out of 17 before this regime came in. They've now won 12 out of 15. So the system works. England being freed from the results mindset is great. Seeing England players coming out and talking boldly this week, whether as an Englishman you agree with what they're saying or not, I've seen so many Ashes series where England look scared of their own shadows after a first test defeat. That isn't the case with this team, and that's great, and that's testament to what Stokes and McCullum have put in place. But if this time next week they're going to lead 2-0 down, good luck with all the results don't matter chat, because it's the Ashes, of course it is.
Yeah, that's a valid point. Let's now cast our eyes forward to Lords. Liam, you mentioned Usman Khwaja. I mean, he had a massive imprint on that win. A fantastic 100, got runs in the second innings. As you said, he's one of the nicest guys going around. Do you sort of see him, because we discussed this the last time we were here on the show, he didn't have a record to speak of on English soil before this, but he's erased all that talk, all that negativity with a fantastic 2 innings there. Do you see him as now that batsman to sort of set the template? Because Warner struggling, like you said, Labuschagne, he might bounce back, but that is a question mark over his overseas record as well. How important is Usman Khwaja?
Oh, he's going to be very important. All opening batsmen, they set the tone straight away, and Aussies did that really well in the first test, while Warner kind of struggled a little bit and has been for a while. But I still feel like Steve Smith is, the key man for Australia's chances throughout the whole series. I know he didn't score many in the first test, but I'm still backing him to have a major imprint on what happens in the next 4 games. He's got a good record over there, and class is permanent, form is temporary, and I'm backing Smudge to bounce back with a big score either at Lords or in the 3rd test.
Because Lords traditionally has been slightly flatter and drier. That said, I mean, we had a road of a pitch for the first test. Do you think Australia will perhaps make any changes?
I think having variety in the bowling attack is, it's going to be vital for both sides. And I think bringing Mitchell Starc in for probably Scott Boland at this stage, I think will be the way they go. And he also adds probably a little bit more with the bat as well, Mitch Starc. So I'm guessing that he'll probably come in. He adds more pace than anyone else that Australia played in the first test, and obviously he's a left armer as well. So he'd be the one I'd be bringing in. But other than that, I can't see any changes, especially to a winning side.
So Liam saying 1 fast bowler, Dom is saying 1 fast bowler. Makes perfect sense given the conditions. Last question, very, very quickly. Predictions. Dom, I'll start with you. Lords, who's taking it?
Who am I to argue with a test match opening batsman? So I'll go with Zach Crawley and say England by about 150 runs.
Exactly 150 runs. Interesting. Liam?
I could imagine it being pretty similar to the first test, to be honest. I think there'll be runs scored. It'll be rather even. But yeah, I think that the Steve Smith factor, I'm backing him to bounce back and probably ton up in one of the innings and get Australia over the line.
Australia, Steve Smith. England, Zach Crawley. 150 is what Dom says. Who knows? I just know that the way the first test panned out, I mean, we mentioned this before when we were doing the series preview. This is not going to be a dull series. We're going to get a result in every single match, and I think Edgbaston has just emphatically underlined that. Liam, Dom, thank you so much for joining us. We'll get you again after the Lord's Test, discussing that match as well as the 3rd test. For everyone watching, thank you. Head over to DAFA News, analysis, scores, updates, news, everything you can imagine with cricket, especially the Ashes, is waiting for you there. This is Jamie Alter signing off on behalf of the entire podcast team. See you guys very soon.